The first ships appeared at dawn on a Tuesday morning. Jake Morrison was drinking his coffee on the bridge of the UES Defiance when the radar operator started screaming. 27 massive objects had just dropped out of nowhere above Earth's major cities. Each one was the size of Manhattan and shaped like a black pyramid with edges that seemed to cut through the air itself. Jake spilled his coffee as he grabbed the communications panel. "All stations, this is Admiral Morrison. We have unknown contacts. In Earth orbit. Battle stations now." The response came too late. Before human ships could even power up their weapons, the alien vessels opened fire. Beams of purple light reached down from the sky like fingers of death. Where they touched, buildings simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not blown apart, they just weren't there anymore. In New York, Captain Luke Thompson watched from his army base as the Empire State Building vanished in a flash of purple light. 1 second it stood proud against the morning sky. The next second there was only empty air and the screams of people who had been in nearby buildings. "What the hell are those things?" his sergeant asked, pointing at the black pyramid hovering over Manhattan. Luke didn't have an answer. Nobody did. The alien ships didn't stop with one attack. Purple beams swept back and forth across every major city on the planet. Paris, Tokyo, London, Moscow, all burning under alien fire. The weapons didn't just destroy buildings, they seemed to burn the very air, leaving behind a strange purple glow that hurt to look at. Jake tried to organize a defense from space, but his fleet of 12 ships looked like toys compared to the alien monsters. When he ordered his weapons to fire, the missiles simply bounced off invisible shields around the enemy vessels. "Sir, we're not even scratching them," his weapons officer reported. Before Jake could respond, one of the alien ships turned toward the human fleet. A beam of purple energy reached out and touched the UES Guardian. The ship didn't explode. It twisted, bending in ways that made Jake's eyes hurt to watch. The screams from the Guardian's crew came through the radio for exactly 3 seconds, before cutting off. "All ships retreat to the far side of the moon," Jake ordered. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. Deep underground in Colorado, Dr. Amy Rodriguez was trying to understand what the aliens were doing. Her laboratory was built inside a mountain, protected by 300 feet of solid rock. She hoped it would be enough. Her computers were picking up strange signals from the alien ships. Not radio waves or anything humans normally used for communication. These were quantum transmissions that seemed to bend space itself to carry information. "Computer, translate the quantum patterns," she ordered. The answer that came back made her blood turn cold. The aliens weren't trying to conquer Earth. They were trying to harvest it. According to the transmissions, Earth had something called quantum resonance fields that were apparently very valuable. The aliens planned to strip mine the entire planet's quantum structure. The worst part was the final line of the alien transmission. It was a simple statement that the computer translated as "eliminate all native life forms. Harvest efficiency requires complete biological termination." Amy grabbed her radio. "This is Dr. Rodriguez at Mount Wilson Laboratory. I need to speak to any remaining military command immediately." While Amy tried to warn the world, Luke Thompson was fighting for his life on the streets of New York. The aliens had opened holes in the air itself, and strange creatures were pouring through. They looked almost human, but their skin was gray and their eyes were solid black. They moved too fast and seemed to appear and disappear at will. Luke's squad was trapped in Central Park, surrounded by 20 of the gray creatures. His rifle fire seemed to slow them down but didn't really hurt them. Every time he shot one, it would stumble, flicker like a bad television picture, then keep coming. "Thompson, we're running out of ammo," his sergeant called out. That's when Luke saw something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. One of the gray aliens grabbed Private Martinez. Instead of killing him quickly, the creature seemed to stretch Martinez across several different positions at once. Martinez was screaming, but his screams were coming from 3 different places at the same time. Luke could see him being torn apart in slow motion across multiple dimensions. "They're not just killing us," Luke whispered to himself. "They're torturing reality itself." Back in space, Jake Morrison was receiving reports from around the world. Every major city was under attack. Military bases were being destroyed faster than anyone could count them. The alien ships seemed to know exactly where every important target was located, but something strange was happening too. Reports were coming in from survivors about unusual events. Shadows that moved on their own, electronics that screamed when they broke, and in a few places, alien attackers had been found dead with wounds that didn't make sense. Jake didn't have time to think about the strange reports. His remaining ships were trying to evacuate as many people as possible from Earth's surface. But there weren't enough ships, and there wasn't enough time. As he watched another city burn below, Jake Morrison realized that humanity was about to become extinct. The aliens had brought hell to Earth, and there seemed to be no way to fight back. But deep in the mountains of Earth, something was beginning to stir. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time was starting to wake up. The aliens thought they were harvesting a defenseless planet. They were wrong. 3 days after the invasion began, the reports started coming in. Strange reports that made no sense. Lieutenant Sam Carter was hiding in the ruins of Chicago when he first heard about them. His radio crackled with confused voices from survivors across the city. "This is Sector 7. We found 5 alien bodies near the old museum. They're twisted up like pretzels, but there are no bullet holes, no burn marks. It's like something just squeezed them until they broke." Sector 12 here. Same thing by the lake. Dead aliens everywhere, but our weapons didn't kill them. Something else did. Sam pressed his radio button. "This is Carter in Sector 4. What kind of something else?" The answer came from a woman whose voice was shaking. "We don't know, but Johnson swears he saw a shadow move without a person, and the security cameras keep showing things that aren't there when you look with your eyes." Sam thought the other survivors were going crazy from stress. 3 days of fighting gray aliens that could bend reality would make anyone see things. But then he saw it for himself. His squad was trapped in an old office building. 12 gray aliens had surrounded them, and his men were down to their last magazines of ammunition. The aliens moved closer, their black eyes reflecting no light at all. That's when the temperature dropped 20 degrees in 2 seconds. The gray aliens stopped moving. They looked around with expressions that might have been fear if aliens could feel fear. One of them made a sound like static electricity mixed with a scream. Sam felt something brush past him. Not air, not wind. Something solid but invisible. The feeling made his skin crawl, but it didn't feel hostile. It felt protective. The closest gray alien suddenly bent backward at an impossible angle. Its spine snapped with a sound like breaking glass. But nobody had touched it. Another alien tried to run. It made it 3 steps before something grabbed it and twisted it into a shape that hurt Sam's eyes to look at. The alien's screams came from inside the walls, even though its body was still in the middle of the room. Within 30 seconds, all 12 aliens were dead. Sam and his squad were alone in the building with 12 corpses that looked like they had been folded by invisible hands. "What just happened?" asked Corporal Davis, his voice barely a whisper. Sam didn't know, but he felt like something was watching over them, something that cared whether they lived or died. 500 miles away, Dr. Amy Rodriguez was discovering the truth in her underground laboratory. Her quantum sensors were picking up readings that made no scientific sense. Computer, analyze the quantum field fluctuations around major population centers. The computer's response made her sit down hard in her chair. Quantum resonance patterns show extreme amplification in areas of human emotional distress. Fields are not dissipating as predicted. Instead, they are accumulating and gaining coherence. Amy stared at the data. According to her instruments, every human death was leaving behind a quantum signature. But instead of fading away like normal quantum events, these signatures were building up. They were connecting to each other. Computer, what is the total accumulated quantum resonance from human casualties? Current levels exceed baseline Earth quantum field density by 4,000% and rising. Pattern suggests exponential growth rather than linear accumulation. Amy felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The aliens weren't just harvesting Earth's quantum fields. They were feeding them. Every human who died was making the fields stronger. But stronger how? And for what purpose? Her question was answered when the power went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the laboratory in red light. But Amy wasn't alone in the darkness. She could feel something else in the room with her. Something that whispered without making any sound. The whisper seemed to come from inside her own thoughts. It spoke with voices she recognized. Her grandfather, who had died in Vietnam. Her college roommate who had been killed in a car accident. Her brother who had died of cancer 2 years ago. But it wasn't just people she knew. The whisper carried the voices of strangers. Soldiers who had died fighting impossible odds. Parents who had died protecting their children. People throughout history who had faced death rather than give up. The voices weren't sad or angry. They were determined. They were saying the same thing over and over again in 1,000 different ways. We will not let them win. We will not let them win. We will not let them win. Amy understood then what was happening. Human consciousness didn't just disappear when the body died. It left marks in the quantum field, especially when death came, while protecting others or fighting against overwhelming odds. The aliens had awakened something that had been building up for thousands of years. Every human who had ever died defending others had left a piece of themselves in Earth's quantum structure. The alien harvesting was giving all those pieces a way to act in the physical world. Back in space, Admiral Jake Morrison was seeing the effects on his scanner displays. The alien ships were still in orbit, still firing down at Earth's surface. But something was wrong with their attacks. "Sir, the enemy beam weapons are losing effectiveness," his science officer reported. "Power output remains constant, but actual damage to surface targets has decreased by 60%. What's causing the interference? Unknown. But our sensors are detecting massive quantum field fluctuations around every area where humans are putting up resistance. It's like the planet itself is starting to fight back." Jake looked at the tactical display showing Earth below. The alien ships still outnumbered and outgunned any human resistance. But for the first time in 3 days, the humans weren't losing ground quite as fast. Something was protecting them. Something that grew stronger every time a human died fighting back. The aliens had brought hell to Earth, but they had made a terrible mistake. They thought they were attacking a defenseless planet full of primitive creatures. Instead, they had awakened the accumulated will of every human who had ever refused to surrender in the face of impossible odds. And that will was getting stronger with every passing hour. Major Kate Phillips stood on the roof of the Denver Federal Building and watched reality come apart at the seams. Her remaining soldiers were spread across the city's last defensive positions. They had been fighting for 6 days straight. Half her people were dead. The other half should have been dead too, but something wasn't letting them die. Private Johnson had taken a direct hit from an alien energy weapon 2 hours ago. The purple beam had burned a hole straight through his chest. Kate had watched him fall and started to call for a medic. But Johnson got back up. The hole in his chest was still there, but he kept fighting like nothing had happened. "Major, this isn't normal," Sergeant Brown said quietly. He was pointing at Johnson, who was currently shooting at gray aliens while purple light leaked out of the wound in his torso. "None of this is normal," Kate replied. But she knew what Brown meant. Her soldiers weren't just refusing to die. They were becoming something else. The change had started 3 days ago. Men and women who should have died from their wounds kept fighting. Not like zombies. They were still themselves, still thinking and talking. But they moved through alien energy, barriers like walking through water. Bullets that should have killed them passed through their bodies without leaving marks. And they weren't the only ones fighting anymore. Kate could see them out of the corner of her eye. Shadows that moved like people but had no bodies to cast. Them. They fought alongside her soldiers, tearing apart gray aliens with invisible hands. Sometimes she thought she recognized the shadows. Old faces from military photos in her office. Soldiers who had died in wars decades before she was born. The gray aliens were terrified. Kate could see it in their solid black eyes. These creatures, that bent reality for fun, were running from shadows and wounded humans who refused to stay down. Across the city, Dr. Amy Rodriguez was recording everything from her underground laboratory. Her instruments were going crazy trying to measure what was happening. Computer, analyze current quantum field density. Quantum resonance has increased by 12,000%. Normal physics models no longer apply to affected areas. Recommend immediate evacuation of measurement station. Why? What's the danger level? Unknown. Instruments cannot measure phenomena that exist outside established physical laws. Amy laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Everything we know about how the universe works is wrong, isn't it? The computer took several seconds to answer. Clarification required. Universe appears to function normally in areas without human emotional investment. Altered physics only manifest where humans are fighting for survival or protecting others. That was the key. Amy had been studying the pattern for days. The strange effects only happened around people who were willing to die for something bigger than themselves. Selfish people, cowards, people who ran away or betrayed others. They died normally when the aliens killed them. But people who stood and fought, who tried to protect others, who chose love over fear, they were becoming something new. Computer. What percentage of Earth's surface now shows altered quantum physics? 47% and growing. Rate of expansion is accelerating. Amy stared at the numbers. Half the planet was now operating under laws of physics that weren't in any textbook, and it was spreading like a slow-motion explosion of impossibility. She heard footsteps in the corridor, outside her laboratory, but that was impossible. The facility was sealed and buried under 300 feet of rock. Nothing could get in. The door opened without anyone touching it. A man walked into her laboratory. He was wearing an old military uniform from World War II. Amy could see right through him to the wall behind, but he looked as real as anything else in the room. "Ma'am," he said, touching the brim of his cap. "Lieutenant Bobby Martin, 3rd Infantry Division, died at Normandy in 1944. Amy found her voice. "You're dead." "Yes, ma'am. Have been for 80 years. But the boys and I, we've been waiting. Waiting. For a fight worth coming back for." "Coming back from where?" Bobby smiled. "From wherever people go when they die protecting others. Turns out that's not as far away as everyone thought. Just took the right kind of invitation to step back through." Amy gestured at her instruments. "The quantum field disturbance, that's you? All of you? Us and everyone else who ever chose to stand between evil and the innocent. Every parent who died for their kids. Every soldier who held the line. Every person who looked at something terrible and said, 'Not on my watch.' We've all been here the whole time just waiting for someone to need us badly enough." Outside, the sounds of battle were changing. The alien weapons were firing, but they weren't hitting anything. Kate Phillips could see gray aliens running through the streets, chased by things that looked like ordinary people but moved through solid walls. "Major, look at this," Sergeant Brown called out. Kate looked where he was pointing. A group of her, dead soldiers, was walking down the street. She recognized Corporal Hayes, who had died on the first day of the invasion. Private Kim, who had been killed saving a school bus full of children. Staff Sergeant Miller, who had held off 20 aliens so his squad could escape. They looked exactly like they had in life, except they glowed with a soft white light. They were hunting gray aliens through the ruins of Denver, and every alien they caught simply stopped existing. "They're not gone," Kate whispered. "The people we lost, they're not gone." Her radio crackled with reports from around the world. The same thing was happening everywhere. Dead humans were returning, not as monsters, but as protectors. They couldn't be hurt by alien weapons because they were already dead. They couldn't be stopped by alien technology because they were powered by something deeper than physics. The gray aliens were retreating. For the first time since the invasion began, the alien ships in orbit were pulling back from Earth's surface, but it was too late for them to run. The force they had awakened was following them. Human spirits were stepping through the walls of alien ships, hunting creatures that had never known what it meant to face something they couldn't understand or control. In her laboratory, Amy Rodriguez watched Lieutenant Bobby Martin fade away like morning mist. "Are you leaving?" she asked. "No, ma'am. We're spreading out. This fight isn't over yet, and now that we're awake, We're going to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Amy understood. The aliens had made a fatal mistake. They thought they were attacking a defenseless world. Instead, they had awakened the accumulated love and sacrifice of the entire human species, and that force was about to show them what real horror looked like. Captain Lisa Gray had never expected to die in space, but she was pretty sure it was about to happen. Her ship, the UES Boston, was inside the alien command vessel above Earth. It had been a desperate plan. Ram the human ship through the aliens' shields and fight their way to the command center. Nobody expected it to work, but it was the only plan they had left. The alien ship's corridors were wrong. They bent in directions that shouldn't exist and were filled with a purple mist that made Lisa's eyes water. Her boarding party of 20 Marines was down to 8, and they were lost in a maze that seemed to change shape when nobody was looking. "Captain, my compass is spinning like crazy," Sergeant Clark reported, "and my watch stopped working 10 minutes ago." Lisa checked her own equipment. Everything was malfunctioning. The alien ship existed in some kind of twisted space that human technology couldn't handle. That's when she heard the singing. It was faint at first, like a song playing in another room, but as they moved deeper into the ship, it got louder. It wasn't one voice, but thousands, men and women singing together in perfect harmony. "Do you hear that?" she asked her Marines. "Hear what, Captain?" Clark asked. Lisa realized she was the only one hearing it. The song was calling to her, guiding her through the twisted corridors. She followed the sound, and her Marines followed her. The song led them to the ship's command center. It was a huge room filled with floating screens and control panels that looked like they were made of liquid light. Gray aliens were working at the controls, but they kept looking over their shoulders like they expected something terrible to happen. "There," Lisa pointed at the largest alien, who wore some kind of crown made of black metal. "That has to be their commander." As soon as she spoke, the temperature in the room dropped to freezing. The gray aliens all stopped what they were doing and stared at empty spaces in the air. Their black eyes were wide with terror. Lisa could see why. The room was filling up with translucent figures, humans in military uniforms from every war in history. She recognized some of the uniforms from history books: Civil War soldiers in blue and gray, World War I doughboys, Vietnam veterans, Marines from Desert Storm. But it wasn't just soldiers. She saw police officers and firefighters, doctors and nurses, teachers and parents. Anyone who had ever died protecting others was there, standing in the alien command center like they belonged. "There, Captain," one of the figures said. He was wearing a Navy uniform from World War II, Commander Jack Roberts, USS Arizona. "We'll take it from here." The gray aliens tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The human spirits were everywhere, and they moved through walls and floors like they didn't exist. Lisa watched in amazement, as dead heroes from throughout history surrounded the alien commander. "Why?" The alien commander spoke in perfect English, its voice filled with terror. "Why do your dead protect you? This makes no sense." Commander Roberts smiled. "Because that's what love does. It doesn't end when the body dies. It gets stronger." The tight alien commander's crown began to smoke and crack. "Impossible. Love is weakness, fear is strength. This is universal law." "Not on Earth," Roberts replied. "Here, love is the only law that matters." Lisa felt the ship shudder around them. Through the floating screens, she could see what was happening outside. The other alien ships were trying to flee, but human spirits were appearing on their bridges, too. Every vessel in the alien fleet was being boarded by the ghosts of everyone who had ever died for others. The alien commander fell to its knees. "We surrender. Please. We will leave your world. We will never return." "Too late for that," Robert said quietly. "You came here to harvest our love. Now you get to experience what harvested love looks like when it fights back." The alien command ship began to tear itself apart, not from weapons or explosions, but from the simple presence of human spirits who refused to let evil win. The ship's alien technology couldn't exist in the same space as pure love made manifest. Lisa and her Marines found themselves back on their own ship without remembering how they got there. Through the viewports, they watched the alien fleet falling apart. Ships that had seemed invincible were twisting into impossible shapes as human spirits filled their corridors. Back on Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison was receiving surrender messages from alien ships all across the solar system. But the messages weren't coming from the gray aliens. They were coming from other species in the alien empire, species that had been conquered and enslaved. Human fleet, this is Captain Zek of the Talani Republic, one message said. We were forced to fight for the Korvath Dominion, but we see now that they have awakened something they cannot control. We wish to surrender to your protection spirits. Jake had no idea how to respond to that. Protection spirits? Dr. Amy Rodriguez's voice came over the radio from her underground laboratory. Admiral, I'm reading quantum signatures throughout the solar system. The effect is spreading beyond Earth. Every ship carrying human spirits is becoming a beacon that other species can sense. What kind of beacon? Hope, Admiral. For the first time in their lives, enslaved species are seeing what it looks like when love fights back against evil, and they want to be part of it. Jake looked at his tactical display. It showed dozens of alien ships throughout the solar system, all broadcasting surrender messages. But they weren't surrendering to human weapons or technology. They were surrendering to the idea that someone could love them enough to die for them. All human vessels, Jake announced over the fleet channel. Prepare to accept surrenders from alien ships, but be careful, we're not just accepting military surrender. We're apparently adopting an entire galactic community. On the surface of Earth, the fighting was over. Gray aliens who had survived the spirit attacks were laying down their weapons and begging for mercy. They had never encountered a species that became more dangerous when you tried to destroy them. Major Kate Phillips stood in the ruins of Denver and watched the last gray alien ship limp away into space. Around her, human spirits were fading away, like morning mist, but their presence still filled the air. Are they gone? Sergeant Brown asked. Kate smiled. The spirits? No. They're not gone, they're just waiting. Waiting for the next time someone needs them. She looked up at the sky, where human ships were beginning to spread out among the surrendering alien vessels. Earth had been attacked by creatures that thought love was weakness. They had learned better, and now the entire galaxy was about to learn the same lesson. 6 months after the invasion ended, General Ryan Murphy stood in what used to be New York City and marveled at how much had changed. The buildings were different now. They didn't just stand up straight like normal buildings. They curved and twisted, in beautiful ways that somehow felt right to look at. Human architects were working with alien refugees to rebuild the cities, and the results looked like something from a dream. But the biggest change wasn't in the buildings. It was in the people. General, the morning reports, his aide said, handing him a tablet. Ryan scrolled through the updates. Construction teams in London had built an entire apartment complex in 2 days. The workers said they could see exactly where each piece needed to go before they picked it up. Medical teams in Tokyo were healing injuries that should have taken months to recover from. Doctors reported that they simply knew what was wrong with patients by touching them. All over Earth, people were discovering new abilities. Not magic exactly. More like they had gained access to parts of reality that had always been there, but nobody knew how to see them. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had an explanation, of course. She was now running the Global Quantum Research Initiative from her laboratory, which had somehow grown to 10 times its original size without anyone actually building anything new. The connection established during the invasion is permanent, she had told the world leaders last week. Human consciousness is now linked to the quantum substrate that our protector spirits inhabit. We can perceive and manipulate dimensions that were previously invisible to us. Ryan understood maybe half of what Amy said, but he understood the results. Humanity wasn't just rebuilding after the war. They were building things that had never existed before. His radio crackled with an incoming message. General Murphy, this is Captain Luke Thompson aboard the UES Guardian. We're approaching the Centauri system with refugee convoy number 47. Ryan smiled. Luke had volunteered to command humanity's first interdimensional ship. The Guardian could travel between star systems by stepping through the same spaces the protector spirits used. It didn't need fuel or complicated engines, it just needed a crew that understood love was stronger than physics. How many refugees this time, Luke? 200,000, sir. 3 different species. The Korvath had them working in mining colonies. They've been slaves for over a century. Luke's mission was to find alien species that had been conquered by the Korvath Empire and offer them sanctuary. It turned out there were millions of them scattered across dozens of star systems, species that had been enslaved, tortured, or marked for extinction by the gray aliens and their masters. When human ships arrived at these worlds, something amazing happened. The protector spirits that surrounded every human vessel would extend their influence to protect the refugees too. Alien species that had lived in fear for generations suddenly found themselves surrounded by the same loving presence that had saved Earth. Bring them home, Luke, Ryan said into his radio. We'll have housing ready. Home. That's what Earth had become for hundreds of different species. Not because humans conquered them, but because humans offered them something they had never experienced before. Unconditional protection. The alien refugees didn't just stay on Earth, though. Many of them asked to join human crews on rescue missions. They wanted to help save others the way they had been saved. Ryan's aide pointed to something in the sky. General, look. A new ship was descending toward the landing pad, but this one was different. It looked like it was built from crystallized light, and Ryan could see right through its walls to the crew inside. Humans and aliens working together, but all of them glowing with the same soft white radiance that marked the presence of the protector spirits. That's the UES Harmony, his aide explained. Captain Jennifer Brooks commanding. She's returning from the Vega system. Ryan knew about Jennifer's mission. The Vega system had been completely destroyed by the Korvath Empire 3 years ago. Every planet burned, every living thing killed. But human ships had detected something there. Quantum signatures that suggested some kind of consciousness had survived the destruction. When the Harmony arrived at Vega, they found exactly what they expected. The spirits of an entire civilization, trapped in the ruins of their dead worlds, unable to move on because they had died trying to protect their children. Jennifer and her crew had done something no one thought was possible. They had offered those alien spirits the same connection that linked human consciousness to the protector realm. The dead aliens could now join the growing community of spirits that watched over the living. How did the mission go? Ryan asked as Jennifer stepped off her ship. Jennifer smiled, and Ryan could see tears in her eyes. We brought them home, sir. All of them. Every parent, every child, every person who died trying to save someone else. They're with us now. Behind Jennifer, Ryan could see shapes moving in the air. Translucent figures that looked like no species he had ever seen before. But their expressions were familiar. They looked like parents watching their children play. Like teachers proud of their students. Like people who had found peace after a long struggle. The alien spirits were joining the protector realm that surrounded humanity, not as servants or subjects, but as family. Ryan's radio buzzed with another message. This one was from Admiral Jake Morrison, who was now commanding the Solar Defense Fleet from a station that existed in multiple dimensions at once. Ryan, we're receiving reports from the edge of the galaxy. The Korvath Empire is collapsing. Enslaved species are rebelling everywhere. They're asking for human protection fleets to help with their liberation. Ryan sighed. It never ended. There was always someone else who needed help. Always another species crying out for the kind of protection that only humans seemed able to provide. But he wasn't tired. None of them were tired. Every time they saved someone, every time they offered protection to the helpless, the connection to the protector spirits grew stronger. They were becoming something new. Not just human, but human plus everything that love could accomplish when it refused to give up. Tell Jake we'll send ships, Ryan said into his radio. As many as he needs. He looked up at the sky where dozens of ships were preparing to launch on rescue missions to distant stars. Each ship carried human crews, alien volunteers, and the invisible presence of everyone who had ever died protecting others. The Korvath Empire had brought hell to Earth, hoping to harvest humanity's capacity for love. Instead, they had unleashed it on the entire galaxy, and that love was transforming everything it touched, turning fear into hope and slavery into freedom. Ryan smiled. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. There was a whole galaxy full of people who needed to learn what it felt like to be protected by someone who would never give up on them. And humanity was going to teach them, one rescued world at a time.